then yeah.
Can I hit you guys with one more before we start?
Yeah.
I'm a little out of the loop. I've been kind of in between for 2 weeks, so give me a break here, all right? That's why I've been popping in the steam room to say what's up, and then I kind of disappear. I do the old Lucci.
Do you know me and Ronch? Give you a break. We're throwing you to the fucking wolves.
There are no breaks.
Give me a break. Oh, give me a break, guys. I don't know what's gone on the market. Well, grow the fuck up, you Herb, and fucking check what's going on.
Listen.
Jesus.
No trades for me for 3 weeks almost now going on. I'm sitting in cash
all right.
over here.
We'll get out our violin.
Dry.
It's because you've been like updating your house and buying Porsches. Like, give me a break, Smiddy.
Life is tough. Most days I go sit in the pool. Ronch, I'm trying to learn from you, dude. I see you out in Hawaii, and I'm like, that's what I got to start doing in life. So now I'm sitting by the pool every day.
All right, what's going on, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Market Misfits podcast. I am your host, Joe Pokeshiva, joined once again by my partner, my little Robin, as I like to call him now, because I'm just fucking better than him as much as he won't admit it. Smiddy, how you doing, my friend?
How's it going, guys? How's everybody doing?
And today we are also joined by a special guest, Ronchero Friedman, who everybody knows and loves. Ron, how are you, buddy?
Good. What's up?
He's back. He couldn't get away from the podcast. He's like, you know what, Joe? I really want to be on content more. I want to talk and yap with you for an hour. He was begging for this. And I was like, I don't know, man. I don't know if you know what you're talking about. I'm not quite sure you're quite up to speed with how me and Smiddy look at the markets.
No, I'm far behind the curve, and I'm happy to be here.
Too funny.
Dude,
so
he's got a drone buzzing in the background.
That's the damn construction.
Shut the window. So while Smitty does this, just so everyone is aware, this guy is basically sitting on a fucking bench in an empty office right now because he's getting work done in his house. So if you hear this echoey sound, I apologize. It's just because times are tough, and he only could afford a bench at the moment, and he's just stuck in a boring little room.
Pretty much my own little echo chamber over here. It's been a rough life for a few weeks.
You're gonna hear fucking just grass just being buzzed left and right the entire time. This is not nearly as good as when I had to do this with Ronch before, and I'm staring out into the most beautiful background of all time in fucking Kona.
I like to
listen, guys. Just think. Oh, go ahead, Ronch. I was gonna say, just think of it like it's basically like Jay's, his lawn guys who show up every Tuesday and like to get the leaf blowers going. It's the same thing. I'm taking lessons from my mentors over here at the steam room. So
yeah, we gotta love that. So it's been about 2 weeks. We're recording this one day late than we usually do. Me and Ron both had prior engagements yesterday. So it is Tuesday, March 25th. For anybody who is listening, last time we spoke, we kind of had the market kind of just started going down, right? We weren't looking bullish at all. Bears were coming at everything full force. Gamma was negative. We were ripping into lows on pretty much everything. And you had all the furus out there trying to call bottoms, which we all know and kind of make fun of at this point because you can't call a bottom. That's not how this works. But, Ron, we haven't had you on here. I'm curious, what you've been seeing inside of the markets, what the markets have kind of looked like to you, like how you've kind of been playing it. Smitty hasn't, as he's working on his house, hasn't done a ton of trading. And for me, the last few days have been rather slow. So I'm curious to kind of, what you've been looking at and how things have kind of played out.
I was talking to my oldest son about this today. The thing that I find difficult about this kind of a market is the pullback to where we pulled back to. While it looks like enough, I don't know if it's enough. And the market kind of switched from, having a sense of, well, at least from a fundamental standpoint, I could say it's overvalued or it's undervalued. And from a technical standpoint, you could say, oh, it's at an area where I might see change, whether that be up or down. And in the case of the last couple of years, it's always been, well, the primary trend is up. So on a pullback, I like it long. Now, to me, it feels like it's just a headline-driven market, and it's all dependent on what the current administration decides to do and what kind of an impact that's going to have on the overall direction of the market. So while if you asked me, do you see opportunity in the market today where it sits? I say yes, because it's right on the 200-day moving average. But do I trust it? No, because I have no idea what words are going to come out of the Cheeto's mouth and what's going to send this market higher or lower, because none of it is making sense. And I still think there's a ton of uncertainty out there.
Yeah, you and I have been on the same page about this for the last month or so. It's tough to call a bottom. I'm looking for, we've had a decent rebound, right? It hasn't been. I mean, if I pull up a daily chart on SPX, I mean, our low was 5,500 right on March 13th. We're up to 5,776, so 270 points or so. It's not bad, but again, to your point, like, is this a head fake? Are we going to keep going lower? It's tough, given that I saw a note from Jay today that he posted from the Goldman Sachs trading desk. They were talking that the consensus is that you should fade this move, right? Which, again, from a contrarian perspective, we typically don't follow the consensus, but given everything that's been kind of said and what's gone on in the markets, it does make sense for this to be a potential like head fake up or a short covering bounce or however else you want to look at it, because we actually haven't had any economic data that's priced in anything from the Trump administration yet, which is the most interesting part to me, at least. We're going to finally start to see that over the next handful of months.
I don't know that because of what's happened or happening in the current administration, and it's very difficult to keep track of and understand what's impacting what, but with the whole Doge, the defunding government waste, I mean, it's impacting things in areas which we don't really know what the end result is going to be yet. For example, they kind of cleaned house at some aspects of like the FDA. That's like monitoring food safety. Some of the people that keep track of demographic stats, like we don't know what kind of impact that's going to have and reflect in the economic data numbers that are coming, whether they're shorter term or longer term. I don't know that we're going to see the impact of that until later, and who knows what that impact is going to be and what the depth of it is, or how much damage that the current administration has done or hasn't done. So I think it's a really unclear and slightly unsettling situation. And from a trader standpoint, my mind says just sell it off 20% and let's hang there, because then at least you put quality at a discount where you're going to attract money again when and if you get blue sky, right? So that's my mindset is, yeah, they did a good job, but not enough. To me, from the high, just rip it, just dump it 20% and let's reset. That's what I'd like to see, but doesn't matter what I'd like to see.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. And to your point, we trade what we see and what they give us, right? I mean, this, next week we could be up past 6,000. We don't fucking know, but
exactly.
it just doesn't feel that way, right? And a lot of this, to you, if you impart your bias and you try to read what you're doing, I mean, for me, I'm with you. I'd like to see another washout, get the quality of discount, get some better entries, because from a multiple standpoints, from a trading standpoint, from a longer term investing standpoint, if I want to get and hold stuff from a longer time, I mean, it makes it a lot easier, right? The hard part it's been for me, and I know Smiddy, we talked about this too, is, I don't feel comfortable really getting long on anything yet, right? Maybe an intraday trade, right? Like if you rode the momentum in Tesla, which has been just booming, right? But am I going to hold that for 6 months? No, they could rip it to the ground tomorrow. And Smitty has some wonderful opinions on Tesla. He loves that company. Smid, come on, talk to me. What are you thinking here?
I mean, even on the Tesla note, I see European sales are down 40%. So I was grabbing some food, reading through the news on that, and they're saying, this was from Barron's, right? They're like, well, European sales month on month are down 40%, but that's better than last month where they were down 45%. And I'm like, oh, great. So we've got a company that's still way overvalued because they're down less. This is not reasonable. And again, I think you've got you've got a lot of air still in this bubble that can come out. So I like the idea of short this bounce, right? Like I think Goldman's, those guys are pretty clever. They do a decent job over there. I think that there might be something to it to say, hey, fade this bounce here because nothing's really got, nothing's improved that much. I think the Fed basically said so. Jerome said so the other day, right? Things are not changing. I don't think that the job market's going to get too much better. And like Ronch mentioned, I'm very curious how a lot of this waste is going to affect jobs, income, and spending for some of these government folks who they had all this money coming in, easy money, and they were contributing, right? Especially some of these high salary folks. I wonder how the air really fades out of the bubble. I think this initial drawdown was kind of sticker shock for a lot of people. I don't think we're out of the woods yet. And I'll stand by that. I'm happy to be in cash right now, as you guys said. No big trades for me in the past few weeks. So I'm happy to be sitting on a pile of cash. We got beat up pretty hard on that gold trade and really had to take stock of everything. And, of course, the metals really had me do a head fake there when seeing gold break new highs. But on the equity side, when I want to buy this dip and hold some of this stuff for longer, it's, this is starting to look juicy to me. On the next pullback, I might want to say, hey, this is where I start taking some shots and leaps and actually start building some positions, because realistically, I need to have my book back up to some sort of allocation that's not just sitting in dollars. So.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I think that's what's cool about all this. We kind of all have a similar read on this, right? But at the end of the day, for us, at least as traders, right, we're gonna trade what we get, whatever we see each day to day. We're just really talking about the longer term picture on whether or not we're gonna, enter in positions that have time. Right. You're going to see all these people online saying bottoms in, I called it. We did this. We're going up. And then, we get 1 day or 2 to 3 days of a bounce and they look like fucking gods. But where were they when we were getting our faces ripped off for, basically a month fucking straight before we kind of hit a bottom. Right. And, Jay had some good points too in the Sunday webinar, Wall Street Jesus, for those that don't know, I call him Jay. He was talking, he's like, I don't see this as a V-shaped recovery. Right, everyone wants it to be because I think you're going to chop around. You're probably going to get pullbacks. He wants to see even larger washout. What is hilarious though is Jay gave a number. I think a couple weeks ago, and I said, Jay, give me a number you'd love to see us get to at the very least. And he goes 5,500. And where the fuck did we bounce right at 5,500? And Jay's like, yeah, okay, I got lucky, and I love it. He's so fucking humble, but. Ronch, like are you in the same type of ballpark here too? Or you're just like, hey, I don't see this as a V shape. I do want to see a 20% rinse, but do you have anything else that you want to add like color to on kind of what you're looking for, or before you decide, hey, like this is the time where I'm okay and comfortable getting long and equities?
So first of all, how many days into the new administration are we? That
shit, like a month and a half, right?
So I think you need a minimum of 90 days, maybe 120, but I think you need a minimum of 90 days. I think those are probably the most critical. And then you'll have a better idea of what will continue to happen down the tracks. But just if I just look at the market today, and if there's no crazy headlines, my immediate knee-jerk reaction is you can buy it here. But that being said, if it doesn't go higher from here, you got to step away. You can't just make a declaration and say, okay, buy it here, we're going higher. And then if it goes down, you stay in because your original thesis was it's going higher. Like, you've got to be willing to admit immediately in a situation or a place like the S&P finds itself right now to say it's not accurate. And this was just a mini bump up, and it is going to dump out and finish, what it started. And that's what I'd like to see. But if I'm wrong, I'd be willing to say step in here because it's going higher. And if it doesn't happen immediately, step out of the way. I mean, signals show in our scans overbought. So, how can I actually go in with any confidence saying buy? Like, even if I said buy it, my immediate reaction is I know I'm going to have to cut this. I know I'm going to be wrong in this spot. I'm going to have to cut it.
Yeah, and you had a really good note. I don't know if it was this week or last week about being defensive, right? And being able to cut those positions if you're wrong and saying, hey, like job well done, right? I made the right move to manage my risk versus sitting in something, averaging in and constantly getting blown out left and right. And to your point, I think you also mentioned in that note too, it's like even if you ended up being right, that's okay. Like it's
Yeah,
you got head faked, right? And
correct.
that's okay.
That's
So
trading.
I think that's a really good point that you were kind of pushing out to people. Otherwise, you get people that are sitting there just getting squashed, just praying and hoping that they're going to be right, which is not at all what we do in this space.
Yeah, and it all goes. But what kind of a trader are you? Are you? What's your time frame? Everything comes back to time frame. Do you use equity? Do you use options? Do you use futures? Like what do you do, and how do you apply what we talk about to whatever it is? How you trade, right? Because what I do is different than what Smiddy does. What I do is different than than what you do, Joe. We're relatively similar, Joe, but only I think on short time frames, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then this market to me is a short time frame trader's market. And if you're a long-term trader, you just don't touch the controls until everything shakes out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And to your point too, I mean, I've been thoroughly enjoying this negative gamma volatility regime because I can get, and again, there's two sides to every fucking coin here, but I can get these quick moves on NQ and rip 100 points in like 5 minutes, right? And if you're on the right side of that, it's a nice payday. And I'm not having to worry about options prices being, exploding on here because of, where the VIX is at, and implied volatility, right? Now we've been kind of in a positive gamma pocket, at least on the indexes where volatility has really been kind of squashed out, at least the last few days. And you saw it today, just fucking sat sideways. There was nothing. And yesterday was the melt up higher, right? So I'm already missing it. Like, I'm not going to lie. I'm sitting there like, give me my fucking volatility back. I'm like a fucking kid that wants to eat at the fucking candy store as much as possible.
True. But I mean, if you're a short-term trader and you like living inside the pocket of the scalps, or even a longer term day trade, quote unquote day trade, there are trades here for both of those types of traders on a daily basis. The long-term trader, if you got in, back in last Friday, or that following Monday, you probably have an opportunity to take some profits. And or if you're an options trader, this is like a very normal spot where you would say, I need to manage risk and roll to a different strike price. And if you don't go any higher from here, you probably cover that position and wait and or look to get short again, right? So there are, and the thing that you can't or anybody can't control is we don't know what headline is coming when, because whatever it is and whenever it is, we're not going to know, and it's going to catch people off guard, and it's going to send the S&P and the Qs up or down very quickly in a way where people will be trapped and they won't be able to get out for a short period of time, and it's going to create a lot of pain for the short-term trader who's not experienced with this.
Right. And the other thing too, to kind of like add to what we were talking about, is because we've said a couple things here. We've said like, yeah, we think, that we not that we think, we would like to see this go lower. We're not, sitting here getting all bulled up saying we're going to all-time highs, right? But on top of that, we have like an internal indicator that we use inside of the room called the squeezometer, right? For those that don't know what that is, but it's basically our internal barometer that Wall Street Jesus sets on a variety of factors when it comes to like sentiment. And what's really interesting about that is you made a comment, I think it was today, Ron, on our futures and index stream, that when the squeezo dips below 40, and even better when it dips below 30, which rarely happens, it's usually a good spot where it marks a temporary bottom, where if you did want to go long on something, right, you can go ahead and take some time out there. I wanted you to elaborate on that a little bit, because the day that we touched 39 in the room was when we hit 5,500. And then where did we go? We went up after. So and those things are not contradictory, right? Like what we could have is a short-term bounce and then go to lows, right? That's where the time frame comes into play.
Well, so and to your point, like inside of our room, the squeezometer is a very simple numerical gauge. And for us, when that numerical gauge is in, the high 30s to the mid 30s, we say that the market is very oversold and it's a buying opportunity. And when it gets into the low to mid 70s, we say it's very it's very overbought and is ready for a sell, right? So when we hit that 39, you remember on that day that we hit 39 at the close and it's time stamped, I said, okay, I'm buying S&P right here. And I did a shorter time frame because again, I was skeptical of whether it would continue to sell off or not. Right. But same thing, like I don't know, I got lucky, but I used indicators that said I had probability of the trade turning around and going the other way. So it's got to be at areas of extreme for me, which is why, like, if you ask me today, what do I think? Flip a coin, because we're in the middle of those indicators. We're not at an extreme, right?
Right.
But that Friday that we dipped to 5,500, I bought at the end of the day, and it was very close to the lows. And I do consider that to be lucky, but it's lucky with probability because we used some things that we look for to help us decide whether we have or don't have probability in that spot or not. And we did have probability in that spot.
Yeah, and even to add, and Smid, while you were gone, this was something that Ronch and I were doing on the broadcast. But that next day when we were looking at it, in the morning, even off the rip of the stream, we were talking about. I was like, wow, like this looks actually relatively supportive. If buyers come in, from a gamma perspective, it looked, and I say the word supportive. Gamma is more of a direction of speed. So when I say supportive, I mean more of speed. But it did look like from a supportive perspective where we were going to kind of go higher, trend day more higher on there. And Ronch was calling it from the squeezo and a couple other indicators that he was looking at that just kind of married perfectly where we got this bounce, and it actually continued for 2 days before it kind of came down. But that was the trade, right? That was the trade for us. We're out. Was I going to sit here and say that we were going to gap 4 days later up? Fuck no. I have no goddamn clue. But for us, you get the 2 day trade and you're like, this is perfect. And then you get out and you hold on and you wait for the next opportunity, which to right now is literally a coin flip. Despite the fact that anti-VIX is like on a major sell signal, or at least it was at some point today. Usually that one's a pretty good indicator too, but yeah, we're coin flipping. So Smid, you've missed I would say a lot, but not really either. Like we went through like 5 days of chop and we finally gapped yesterday. So it's not like you missed a whole lot, but are you feeling any FOMO yet, brother? Like, do you want to come back to the dungeon with us and trade, or what's going on?
Man, I like to pop in and give Lucci a little shit when I can, and then make sure I get out of there. So, but no, I try to pop in the room and just say, see how everyone's doing. Hopefully, everyone's making some money. But it's been nice to take a little break. I was telling the wife earlier, like this is the first time I haven't traded and had charts and screens and actually been really involved in this in 5 years. So this is the first, big break that I've taken, and it's a bit refreshing. I think obviously there's a little bit of, the nuance of having construction going on at the house and actually taking a big loss and taking a step away and saying, hey, I need to take a little bit of a break, re-rack my brain. And then the coincidence of the market selling off, it's, I don't want to sound like I'm smarter than anybody. I got lucky that I wasn't allocated, right? So I can't take any credit where that's due. I'm definitely, seeing this bit of a rally. I wanted to see 1,000-point run in the NASDAQ from the lows, and we've got it. And now I'm kind of like, well, would have been nice to catch some of that, with a few hundred contracts of NASDAQ, but not going to sit here and count pennies I missed. There's no sense in doing that. But no major FOMO yet. I really just have the shopping list going, things that I think look good, mostly quality names. I'm still a little blown away by some of the garbage out there. Like Oklo is one of them, the nuclear play, OKLO. Earnings yesterday, I called this out on Twitter actually to a couple folks when Jay posted it. And these guys make no revenue. It's a $3 billion company. They've got no revenue. There is no nuclear reactor they're building. I think it's kind of a joke, right? Like, what are we doing here? We could launch St. Lucie public and we have a better value than that. We're not $3 billion, but there's still a little bit of exuberance in the market, I would say. And that's, we need to see some of that garbage cool off. Some of the AI names, I don't know if you guys remember this key term from years back called the metaverse. Whatever happened to that? Yeah. I feel like a lot of this AI nonsense is the same thing as the metaverse. In 18 months, we're going to have a whole new term and we're going to be like, yeah, AI, shmai, whatever, who cares? So that's kind of where I'm at too, is, keeping an eye on some of these. I've got a couple AI names that I watch and I just, I can't get myself to pull the trigger. Joe, we joked about that underbelly name. I want to buy 1 million shares of something, and
you're gonna get it. I found a $2 stock for you that you could do this on. Okay. I don't know anything about the company. All I saw was some news that hit on Benzinga and people went crazy. And the chart is ridiculous. It is absolutely insane. It is ALUR, Allurion Technologies. And again, disclaimers always on this. These are not buy recommendations. This is a glorified piece of shit. However, if Smiddy wants to buy 1 million shares to make his nut for his life, I'm all for watching this unfold.
Look at this thing. We're in hockey stick mode. Oh yeah. I think
so. For those that want to pull up this chart of ALUR. It opened at $182 a share, roughly, and it is now worth $3. So I'm not saying it's going to go there, but look at that upside, man. Just look at it.
Beautiful. Joe, the market cap's 18 million. I'm going to end up owning 5% of this company.
You're going to be a board seat member. You're going to be a board member on there. You can fucking tell people.
Now we're talking. That's just what we need. Me and my guy over here being on the board of anything. Good Lord.
Oh, that would be crazy. Ronch, can you imagine that? I mean, you guys don't know his guy, and we'll spare any details about him, but
I think you know what? I can't imagine that when you come in to play this game, that in the back of your mind, you think one day I'm going to be on the board and actually get to take over this company and run it. Like, why would anybody ever want that headache in there? I'm not here for any of that. You know what I mean? I'm not here for
comedy to me.
We're gonna do a little hostile takeover here, and just we're gonna end up in the health AI field before you know it. We're gonna launch a whole line of hyperbaric.
You're not Bud Fox in Wall Street. That's not how this works.
Listen, Ronchero, I can dream, all right? I can dream. But no, that's what I've been looking at. Look, they've got earnings tomorrow. This could be the play, guys.
God. Watch them.
We're gonna be you better be careful, Ronch. I'll be your neighbor in Hawaii before you know it.
Bring it on. There's plenty of space.
Perfect.
You did mention something though, Smiddy, there when we were, before we started memeing, but you're talking about some of these names that just are crazy, and then like the rotation that not necessarily rotation, but I'll say the key words, the buzzwords that everyone likes to put in their deck, right? We went from crypto and blockchain, right? You remember that era, to that move to metaverse, then that move to AI, and now we're in the quantum era. So if you looked at the quantum names, there was a quantum day by NVIDIA, a handful of days ago, Ronch, I think.
Yep.
And
last week, yeah.
I was literally sitting there and I think I said it to Ronch and Jay. I'm like, isn't this like a sell the news event, like almost exclusively, especially if NVIDIA's running it? And Jay's like, yeah, usually he goes, you going to play it? I'm like, yeah, probably not. And it was a glorious short. Every single fucking quantum name went down 10 to 13% before they got their face ripped off. And it was kind of really nice to see because, to your point on a lot of these, Smiddy, your trade was probably actually buying the quantum names in November at $1 when they peaked at $12. That's it. That's your life. But the thing is, why would you?
I got a forgetty about the Rigetti. I mean, that thing's been eating at me because Jay called it at about $1.93. He brought it up on stream on a Sunday webinar, and I was like, I don't know what this shit is. And there it was, went from $1 to 20. I mean,
that's the beauty. That's the beauty, though, Smitty. Like, you don't need to know what it does, right? If you step in when it's moving, and you know what I mean, you're smart enough to tap out or adjust, then you're good to go. Who cares?
You're just trading it too, right? Like, it's just a trade. You don't give a shit about the fundamental. You're not like, this is going to be the game-changing stock. It's the next NVIDIA,
Well, and the way that I run the book too is I'm going to get a double and I'm selling most of it. I'm going to sell 75%, and I'm going to put my money back in my pocket, take a little profit. Learn this from Ronch years back of like, you roll the position and then you leave some runners on and say, hey, now if I get paid, awesome. Take a little note out of Kelman's book, maybe sell some calls against it, which, in hindsight, right, that would have been an amazing play to be in something like Rigetti, which I think that those options are still, trading with a decent bit of premium, but you had plenty of time to do it. And they've got the weeklies that, yeah, I mean, these actually have a little premium in them if you have a size, like decent size. So
I don't mind a little, like if you see you had that big run up in like an IONQ and a Rigetti, I don't mind the idea of, well, I don't know much about it. I'm willing to buy some and tuck it away. And maybe if whatever this particular next phase in AI and or quantum computing is the real thing, and I'm just not smart enough to see it, at least I'll have some of it for when and if it makes a run up. You know what I mean? And if it doesn't work,
right,
it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, no, exactly. Exactly. And then, from there, I started looking at some of these little AI robotics companies, and that's something I'm keeping my eye on. So I've got a handful of those that, one has a nice headquarters here in Austin. I keep debating going to check them out and go meet these guys in person and say, hey, let me see the product. What are you doing? I'm sure they'll love seeing me, looking like a vagrant pop in and say, hey, what do you guys got going on in the office today? I bought 1 million shares of your company. So
while he's dressed like a homeless person too,
exactly.
Remind you, right?
So yeah, I keep thinking about that. We've got a couple guys in the room, notably Horizon, who's got some interesting insights. That guy, he did really well on the regional bench short. For those who aren't in the room or haven't heard of the guy, he really crushed that one. So he's a fun dude to kind of keep a tab on. As I brought up some of these names, he was like, oh yeah, I've got a handful of this, I've got a handful of that. So that's, again, not to continue showing the steam room here, but it's one of the beauties of the room is that you have so many good brains thinking about this, playing this game, that might have a name that pops up that, oh, I respect this guy. Oh, hey, Ronchero's playing this, or, Joe's short that, so I'm buying a boatload of it. Had to throw that.
Did you just say that if I'm short something, you're taking the opposite side of my fucking trade, you bastard?
I have to. I gotta fake.
And you're gonna take. Here's the problem too. You're gonna take the shit with fucking size and move the entire spread and the fucking spot price, like Kelly did to me probably, I don't know, 3 to 4 months ago. That was the craziest shit I've never seen it in my life, like actually play out. And Kelly moved price against me on one of the trades, and I was like, fuck.
Yeah.
I still made money on it, but like if you would have let me know ahead of time, hey, I'm about to dump, 50 to 60,000 shares when it was light volume during lunchtime, I'm like, that would have been a good time for me to get the fuck out.
It would be nice to know. Yeah, I do usually give a little heads up, especially when we're blowing out of shit. Like I had that Intel trade. We had 350,000 shares, and I was like, all right, guys, I'm going to spend the next 30 minutes offloading this, so get ready. Which, fortunately in that, you can get that kind of size off. It's not that big a deal, but no, that is, I had to throw a little shade at you, Joe.
I love it. That's what I'm here for.
You're getting faded.
I mean, I got Ronch fucking with me on broadcast. Then he got me and Ronch fucking with Jay on broadcast, which has been pure fucking comedy. Like even today when I went on there, I was like, "You miss me?" He goes, "Yeah, kinda." And I just started laughing. I'm like, he misses me and Ronch just ribbing him. Like we got on a topic about Pokemon cards. I don't know if you were there, Smiddy. And like
a little bit of that,
baseball cards, like just because it was so slow. Like we were just the volatility had been quenched. The flow has been shit. So just we're just shooting the shit, and it was pretty funny.
I popped in Friday, and it was pretty quiet like that. Where people, it was. I think we were talking about cars and shit again, where it's like, hey, some days it's nice to have the company. And again, you guys are pure entertainment fucking gold over here, because there are days that I'm bored. I'm like, what's going on the stream? Let me check in with these dudes, and it's just a roast fest. So you gotta love that.
That's probably the best time is when shit slows down and we're bored, is when the most shit talking happens.
Yes.
Yep.
And it's awesome.
Which we need.
And then the funny part is I like to crack a joke, because then I'll be like, oh, Norris is going to get emails about me and Ronch just talking about fucking nonsense. And then I don't know if it was me or Ronch said it, which it doesn't matter who said it, but I was like, we're stopping you from trading in this shit. Like, what do you? We're here for comedy. I think it was Ron that said, I'm like, that's a great fucking point.
Yeah, somebody got upset, and I was like, I'm trying to keep you from trading. It's a bad idea.
Right? Like,
Don't
unless
lose
you're
your money.
finding like the perfect name to do, like, unless you're, and I think that was a day where the only thing really running was Tesla.
I think so.
Tesla's
I think
the
that's
only thing
right.
moving. But hey, if you fucking Lucci has been sniping the equities, shout out Lucci, even though I know he's not going to listen to this. Anyways, so I want to take a small little step back and something that popped in my head that I was going to ask Ronch before we went down our lovely rabbit holes like we always do. Ronch, if you're someone that's in this market as a trader and you're like, hey, I just have so much FOMO that I need to scratch that itch, right? I need to get into something. What are you looking for? And if they are going to do that, like, is there a way to protect themselves against it too? Like, where you're playing both sides? I got to ask both, but I'm just curious. Like, it's a kind of a loaded question, but I'm curious.
Yeah. So, I mean, what do you think I'm going to answer your question with a question. What do you think that question's going to be?
What's your time frame?
Yes. What's your time frame? So, if you want to scalp, let's say, for example, in my opinion, every day there's an opportunity for a scalp. The question is, what is it that you want to scalp? Do you want to scalp an index? Do you want to scalp SPY Qs, or do you want to scalp the futures? Or do you want to scalp an individual name? And the answer is, in this environment, you can scalp anything. And if you're looking at very short time frames, for me, the most simple way to scalp a trade is to use what you see me use every single day, and that's the level up indicator, where I use a very simple way of using the volume weighted average price for the current day versus the volume weighted average price from the day prior. So, for example, like, let's just throw Tesla out there as an individual name. This morning you opened with a gap up, they probably trapped, and what did they do? They dropped the price all the way down to the prior day's volume weighted average price. It chopped around there for let's say 10 or 15 minutes. And then if you wanted to be in, that was your entry long to stay in for a scalp up to, kind of above the same day VWAP. Or if you wanted to be in that trade all day, you could have sat in that trade for the entire day, just using the current day VWAP as, hey, should I tap out here or not? And at the end of the day, you got that nice, beautiful ramp to the upside. That's an example of how can I use it on a day like today. And I apply the same thing to the SPY, right? To ES or SPX. Like, all I'm doing is using, can I get an entry or an exit on today's VWAP or the day prior? And today it was the same thing. Like, if you were somebody who wanted to short, you had ample opportunity to short. And if you wanted to go long, we talked about this towards we were in the last hour of trading. And what I was saying was, hey, what it has shown me is there have been a series of lower highs, and it was struggling to get back up, right? And the two VWAPs were pinching together. What I said was, you would probably see a move with some momentum to either side. And because the price is above a rising 5-day moving average, I would lean to the upside. And what happened at the end of the day? You got to ramp up. Now, I'm not saying I can predict that shit, but I'm saying is, you can trade this every single day, and the direction isn't important. What's important is your time frame, and are you trading in an area where, regardless of what side you're on, are you giving yourself probability or not? And if you don't know how to read that, you're just guessing, and you're a donator. So you've got to play in areas for whatever your thesis is that you have probability. And if you get it wrong, you exit immediately, because you should have been in a spot where you were right to begin with. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. Complete sense. Same way that I like to trade with you. So,
yeah,
it's always just good to hear, like, you're very articulate. So I think people enjoy those explanations, especially because you're going to have that. I mean, I already know someone listening to this is probably like, fuck these guys for wanting this shit to go down more. I want to go long because I kid you not. I mean, I had a DM and I won't name who. This person's awesome, by the way. But I got a DM from someone when they're like, yeah, I don't understand what X person in the room is saying about this. And I'm like, it's half bullshit. Don't listen to it. Other half is good. And then I was like, but and I made a comment like, no, I want this to go down another 30%. Like I really do. And he's like, no, my long-term portfolio is getting clobbered. I'm like, I'm sitting there by myself. Like, what's your time frame on your long-term portfolio?
Where have you been the last 2? If you've been long for just the last 2 years, you're fine. There's nothing wrong.
Right. That was like my whole thing. I'm sitting there. I'm like, I'm not rooting against you and your long-term portfolio. It's going to hurt mine too. But I'm just looking at it in a different lens where I get we'll call it a generational buying opportunity. Because you love those words.
I do. Certainty, right? Certainty in the face of uncertainty is great.
100%. So Smiddy, are you gonna, when you get back in the saddle, what are you looking at? Talk to me and Ronch here.
I'm going to buy Ronchero special China across the board. It's going to be just China buys, and we're going to hold those until she prints all of the money. No. So again, looking at some of the big guys, right? Quality. Oracle's been one of our favorite names, and that's come back and, looking decent. I don't know if they're going to kind of have the gusto that they had last year. They really had a good year in 24. So kind of tough on that one. But, again, we go back to kind of the majors, your Metas, your Microsoft, probably won't play Apple as much. Most of you guys know, these guys know, obviously I'm running a client book over here with a guy who he fancies himself a stock picker. So I get to do a lot of research and make sure that some of these names are quality. But to be honest, I kind of want to buy the index and just sit on it, sit on the Qs, actually get a sizable position, maybe buy some leaps in the Qs and just sit on it. And on that note, I had a couple top bets that I pulled from the room, but one of them was SPGI, which is S&P Global. And someone was buying January 27 leaps back on March 17th. They bought about almost $6 million worth of the 490 calls. And those guys are not doing too shabby. So they're up pretty big. They paid about $81. They're trading on the bid side, I think, $91. So again, big trade, someone who had some confidence to say, hey, I think this is going to do well. Not that that's S&P Global is not the SPX, it's not SPY, but again, buying quality, right? Those guys aren't going anywhere. It's kind of, you might have heard of them. They kind of underpin some of the markets here. So that was an interesting bet, kind of jokingly. Ronch, I did see a young China bet that was pretty good size. Looks like they're underwater, but again, caught my eye. It hit the top bets list, so that was interesting. And then another one out of the Indian market, MMYT. So it's basically like India. It's like Booking.com for India, right? So it's a travel booking website. And it was a pretty big bet, 769,000 on the August 115 calls. So they paid 1066. They were up, above the ask. So it's a pretty big spread on those. I think it's bid side's $10, and then the ask side is like 1250 or so. So they're kind of in no man's land, but the stock looks like it's moving. Kind of interesting, right? India is one of those developing markets. I got a couple buddies who are Indian. Obviously St. Lucie. I think that India is an up and coming market, and as we joke about China a lot in the room, or Ronch loves the Chinese government over here, but it's one of those things that you want to bet on the up and coming market, right? You want to take a stab at something that, hey, we're so established over here. I want to take a shot at something that might have catastrophic growth to the upside, right? That was something that caught my eye because it A, hit our top bets list, and B, I like India. I think that it's up and coming. I forget the super wealthy family over there. They're some of the wealthiest folks, I think the richest folks in India. But I've seen them on Bloomberg a handful of times, and they're really investing in the local communities and trying to bring up, kind of bring everyone up through the ranks. I find it interesting. I find it very interesting that we'd rather build a new iPhone factory in India versus, out of Foxconn in China. So I think that's something to keep an eye on. Not, this bet may or may not be a good one, but I do like that thesis of let's buy some India.
See, that's where I have absolutely no color to add because I know nothing about the India market. That's not my thing, but that's why you're here, Smid. Talk about it. I mean, that's the interesting thing because it's not going to really be beholden. I mean, everything has a little bit of, ties to the S&P 500 or the global indexes for sure. But even that leap play that you're talking about, that's 2027, right? So they have a lot of time to allow fluctuations in price. Yeah, that'll be cool to see when you get back in the market. I mean, these are not names we usually talk about in the room, so I think it'll be interesting when other people start hearing like Smiddy's buying what? Like, fuck is this? And then you probably
young China over here.
Yeah, you'll get some comments probably from Jay, be like, yeah, fucking Jay, I don't know. No, he'll just do one of those, and I'm looking forward to it. But another kind of pivoting away from that, there was a really interesting, and we talk about this, Ronch, probably every time we do this now, McElligott note, which can always just make people make their head fucking spin. Sometimes I feel like a genius reading it. Sometimes I think I'm like an absolute idiot. But I was giving like a brief, I don't know, synopsis of what he was kind of saying or summary to people in the room that were curious, like just from how I read it. And of course I like popping this shit in AI for them to like give me a better answer than what I was looking at. But some interesting things that were kind of in there was he noted that market participants seem to be pricing in a fat tail economic crash scenario, which would require at least 4 Fed rate cuts by 2025, by the end of the year, which is kind of nuts, right? Yep. I think right now most people are kind of pricing in maybe 1 in May. We're not quite there. I think if I go and pull it, which I can, I think the last time I checked it maybe a week ago or a handful of days ago was like only a 30% chance of a cut in May. But to say 4 is, the market would really need to take a shit, like a big shit, I think, for them to even do it. And to your point, what you said earlier, Ronch, not pivoting back to what we said, but we actually don't know what's going to happen from a Trump economic policy to begin with. So it's difficult to, foresee this or guess. But to say that people are starting to price it in is where I get to go. My light bulbs start to go off and I go, that's interesting. And it adds a little bit to the bias of like, I'd like to see this rip down lower. But I just thought it was an interesting part of that note. But he also didn't say that we couldn't have some short-term bouncing. I mean, we're end of quarter, right? So you got quarter rebalancing coming up. You have the JPM collar coming up which I think is like 20 million in Vega that's going to end up coming off, that they're going to have to readjust. And again, I think we bounced off that level. So, it's nothing to really worry about, but there's a lot of movement that has to happen at the end of the quarter where you might see, and Ronch, you probably know this better than me and Smiddy, but a lot of the times don't they kind of go into like the bigger names? Cause bonds have been outperforming the equities for the most part on this downturn. Maybe there's a chance where they kind of come in, start buying all this stuff at a discount, and we get a little bit of a breather to the upside before they decide to rip everyone's faces off again. Like, what do you think on the quarter rebalancing? Do you think that has anything to play into it? That's just what the note was saying.
I mean, I don't know that you can predict what's going to happen at the rebalance, but will it have an impact? I think it can, especially in an environment like this. And when you talk about, there's money in bonds, that's kind of a very broad blanket statement. Like, what bonds? Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And how's it gonna reallocate from where it's actually at? Are you talking about bonds that are maturing? Are you talking about guys that are just are, because bond yield price versus yields are teeter-totter, right? So does it skew price and does it skew yield because money is coming out from whatever tranche to go into equity? Like, there's so many different little slidey abacus type of formulas that you could try to apply. I think it's easier to try to follow price action as opposed to, well, where's it coming from? I mean, by the time you figure it out, it's too late. Right. You know what I mean? So, if it's kind of, and that's kind of what we look for in some of the footprints in is this market going to make a turn? Like, it's easier for me to look at something like a squeezometer and say it's at 39. And guess what? On the same day, and one of the advantages we have by finding unusual flow, do you remember that bull risky that came in on March 12th for JP Morgan? Those guys were going out to April. They bought calls and sold puts to finance the calls. Like, that's a very bullish signal in a very ugly tape. I don't need to know that money's coming from bonds into equities to see a change. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
That's more. It's more chartered financial analyst, big brained thinking, which I don't have a problem with, but it's not my lane. And half of the time, those guys don't get it right to begin with. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So I'm always somebody that looks for, like what Smiddy was talking about, quality at a discount. Can I get it? How do I get in? And, I use leaps and I use 80 delta leaps, and people always ask me, well, aren't you worried about being hedged? And I'm like, that is the freaking hedge, right? that is the hedge. I bought something. I have the same control as you. I participate 80% of the underlying if we're both right in the same direction, and I have a 2/3 or a third of the capital risk that you have on. So I'm hedged. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
right.
That's where I come from. Is like, I don't, those other bigger economic conversations, I think, are harder just in general, because what you're looking for as an individual is, well, if this happens, I should expect that outcome. And it's never that way.
Right.
If it was that easy, we'd all be billionaires. You know what I mean?
Right. And I think,
easy.
Right. And I think a lot of this too, at least the way that I the purview that I have with a lot of this is like, it's just a date on a calendar that I'm going to circle and be like, okay,
correct,
some shit might happen today. Right. And I'm going to trade the price action or trade my style based off of that. Or I might just step the fuck away and say, too much bullshit going on, too much fuckery. I don't want to do it. Right. Yeah. I'm just like you. I'm not going to sit there and try to guess what's going to happen. It's just, okay, another day I got to be wary of, just like on OPEX days. I have no idea what's going to happen. Unless it's like a big OPEX and there's gamma built up on a strike, like we called before. I was like, hey, 5650 is that total gamma strike. It's a good chance if price action dictates us higher that we're going to chop around that. And what do? We chopped around that number in 5-point clips all day until Mach came in at 7 billion to the buy side. So that's about it. Other than that, I'm like you. It's just circle of the calendar, see what happens. So we are getting close to time when Ronch is going to tell us that he needs to leave because he doesn't love us as much as he says. And I really want to bring him into this segment that we've done once, but I fucking love it now. I think it's kind of funny and it's fun. So it's called Trader Fade. For those that listened last week or that have never listened at all, basically I pull some trades from the financial Twitter space that people have taken this week, or usually like today, like the day of. And I blasted out to the guys, me and Smiddy, and now Ronch for this episode. And they have to make a quick decision when they look at a chart of saying, yeah, I would trade that, or nah, I'd fade it. And again, this is just for entertainment. These are not buy recommendations at all. If you would have listened to me and Smiddy at all last week, we both went 0 for 3 on these.
Oh, nice.
Which is just hilarious. But last week, just get people up to speed where it was, or 2 weeks ago, is MSTR March 14th, 275 calls, which ended up in the money 2 days later when we had the big gap up. It was Meta March 14th, 615 calls, which were in the money the next fucking day because, again, gap up. And then the only one that we faded both of those. The only one that we said we would trade was a firm March 21st 50s, which technically it got into the strike, but it was on the day of expiration. So the premium would have gotten destroyed. So we're going to call it 0 for 3, both for me and Smiddy, because we agreed on all of them. And maybe Ronch will fare better than the rest of us today as we do this. So I've pulled 3 trades. Smiddy, I will start with you and then I'll go to Ronch. So Ronch, I don't know if you have access to TradingView to pull up a chart, but
I do.
The first trade is coin April 4th. So this is next week expiration. 220 calls. The best
220
part is
calls.
there's no
Yeah.
prep work here. No one has any prep work. This is right off the cuff, which makes it more exciting. So, we're sitting at 203 in the post market right now. What do you think?
20? I'll trade it. I'll buy it.
He's buying it? Okay. So we have a buy from Mr. Ronchero on the coin 220 calls for next week. Why do you like it, Ronch? What did you see when you first pulled up the chart?
I just am thinking Bitcoin is detached from the political shenanigans a little bit more than the underlying market. So if you're looking for a pop to 220, the reason I like what they're looking at there is you're talking about an anchored volume weighted average price that dates back to January 2nd, 2024. So that's what they're going for.
So Ronch is trading. Smiddy, Mr. Bitcoin, what are you doing?
I'm taking it as well, and I've got unrelated but similar logic, right? So I've got the average weighted volume or all marbles.
Just say VWAP. I know you can't speak.
I've got the VWAP over here from the election on Bitcoin is sitting right at about 93,600. We're at 87.6 right now, and on top of that, I use a lot of volume profiles in my trading as well. The 2025 volume profile and the point of control is at about 96. So you get a nice little channel trying to open up here within about a 3,000 point range on Bitcoin. And I think that we're going to go tackle that. Even if we do, this VWAP, once we broke lower, has been resistance for Bitcoin. So it'll be a nice spot to see if there's a little bit of continuation. But again, if we get Bitcoin moving up, we're going to see Coin, MSTR, some of these other Bitcoin miners are going to have a nice move up as well.
Yep.
All right. I like the logic you guys have, but there's no fucking shot I'm going to sit here and we're all going to take trade on this thing. So fuck all you. I'm fading this motherfucker. Right. Fading the 220s. That brings up trade number 2. This one has actually been talked about a lot in the room recently. It is the Boeing, April 4th, so next week, 190 calls.
Fuck.
I'm so glad Ronch is on for this one.
I think Boeing's a push. I'm not. I wouldn't trade. I wouldn't fade it.
Well, if you don't think it's going to pay you by basically it has to hit the strike is kind of the way that
okay. I'm not taking this. This to me is I'm fading this.
Ronch is fading. I know Ronch wants to tell everybody why so badly. He hates Boeing. What do you think there, Smith?
What was the date on that one? What's
next week, April 4th.
Next week. All right, April 4 is 190. I mean, honestly, they're not too expensive. There's a decent bit of open interest there. I would take the trade. I disagree with giving Boeing the contract on that next gen fighter. I think that should have went to Lockheed, but you know what? I'm not an aerospace engineer. If I were, I'd be designing fucking military bombers and shit. So yeah, I would go ahead and take that. I think, it's kind of we can break out of the most recent high from Monday. I think that you could go try that. That was kind of a local high before it sold off pretty hard. So I can see that. I could definitely see 190s by next week. That gives us a little time, and they're not too expensive. So I'm going to go ahead and take it.
Yeah, I'm fading that shit. Fade God coming back. This motherfucker. Fuck this market. Needs to go down, another 20%. No, I see this local top here where everything's kind of, faded, kind of at the 188, 189 range. So I think it's close. I mean, if we get a gap tomorrow, like 188 and like it was in the money, or not in the money, but, made some money, that's a different story, but it's got to hit the strike price for these particular trades. So I'm fading it. I think the pop that this thing has had from 148 to 188 is just crazy. And I am not a Boeing fan. And
they're so good. And it's not that I'm not a Boeing fan. First of all, I have traded Boeing in the past. I think it's a great company, and it needs obviously management lost its way, and they need to refocus, right? But the put and call buyers on this particular stock get it wrong more often than they get it right. So for those reasons, and like you just talked about this local top at 189, I don't see it getting through there. If it does, it'll be one of those little spike ups, and then they'll fade it. That's my thought.
Yeah, and by that time, unless it happens, soon, right? Theta will do its job at least on the premiums. Yeah, ever since all this stuff's happened with Boeing recently, I'm Airbus. I'm an Airbus guy now. Give me some Airbus stock. Last one. This one is really interesting because it's been a point of controversy. It's all over FinTwit. It is MBLY. Mobley. Now, again, these are trades from our friend over Mr. Banana Stocks because he posts everything and it's pure comedy. But this guy, so Banana Stocks on this particular trade is added to this position over the last few days like 4 times, and he is in the April 17th. So this is mid-April, 19 calls.
Nope.
He also owns 10,000 shares.
Nope. He's going to get bent over like a taco.
Hey.
No. Absolutely not. No fucking way.
Oh, this is so good. So Ronch is fading it hard.
100%. No way I would take that trade.
Mid dog?
Man, I'm a little torn on this one. So here's a little. Obviously, I'm in Austin down here. So listen, I've seen a bunch of Teslas, the new updated Model Ys, which not a fan of Tesla, Elon, the whole gambit, but they are running some sort of crazy rig on top of the cars. And I've stopped and asked a couple of the guys who are driving these manufacturer play cars around. Tesla's changing something about the way they're doing whatever they're doing. And I don't know if they have come around to say we need to use LiDAR on the cars, because right now they use camera and vision, which, ironically, every other car manufacturer in the world thinks is ridiculous. So that said, how about we get a weird little Tesla Mobility partnership here, and that's to be announced. I'm just spitballing here, guys. This is not financial advice, but I'm gonna go ahead and take it and say that there's maybe something we don't know, because I see these around town every day, and something tells me that Tesla's changing the way that they're doing their automated driving.
Well, fuck you. I'm fading this shit. Fading it to the ground, baby. Burn, baby, burn. Fade that crap. I hope he gets his face ripped off. This is all jokes. I really hope he's okay. He's probably a nice person in real life. But yeah, no, fuck that shit. Especially because he's added like 3 or 4 times. I mean, it had a little gap. I know nothing about this name. This is purely gut instinct. More than anything else. He's got time. So, there's potential it hits it. But no, I'm fading this piece of crap stock right now. Unless, again, if we get news, fine, Smid. Kudos to you for living in Austin and being able to see them on top of Teslas.
Yep, I'll tip my hat to you if you get that right.
Tip of the cap.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I'm speculating here, but there's something going on, and the guys are real weird when I go ask them. I've asked like 3 different drivers, and I'm like, what is this rig up here? And they're, it's the old classical. I can't say anything. And I'm like, listen, guy, I don't actually give a shit about you or the car. I just want to know what's going on.
Love it. So that's Trade or Fade. I'm really excited for this because we have 3 trades from Smiddy. I'm fading the whole fucking pack. That's the bear in me right there. And Ronch has a much more nuanced trade, fade. So we're gonna find out what happens in 2 weeks, or actually probably 3 weeks, because I think I think I'll be on a cruise the next time we're supposed to be recording.
Why, do you want like a foodborne illness? Why are you going on a cruise?
Listen, the lady has been on cruises. I never have. She's like, we should go. I was like, fine. So we're going like 4 days. If I come back and I'm sick, I'm blaming Charlie regardless. It's not the crew's fault.
I'd say you have 1 chance in 2 of getting a norovirus on your first fucking cruise.
But what if I don't lick the dice?
I knew it was coming.
You might have a chance if you don't lick any foreign objects on that cruise.
Just dice and doorknobs. That's the way to go. But all right. Well, Ronch, I know your time is up. You gave me more than I thought. Do you have any parting comments to our faithful listening base?
I mean, I still think this market is to me, it's still wait and see. I would love to just be able to jump in and buy it to the upside, but the internals are telling me I have to use a little bit of caution. Doesn't mean that I won't take it to the upside. It doesn't mean that I want to short it. It means I need to see what happens in this particular area with the S&P sitting right on the 200-day moving average. So it's of interest, and I'd like to see what happens from here. And everything can be just completely burned to the ground with one headline. That's the problem.
Yes, sir. We got some nice economic data that's going to be, coming over the next few weeks. So it'll be interesting to see how the market digests it. But Ronch, thank you so much for joining me and Smiddy. We appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
I will let you go while I bother Smiddy for another 5 minutes to see what he's going on in his life. But Ronch, always a pleasure, man. I know everyone's going to love this. So thanks again.
All right. We'll see you guys.
Bye, Ronch.
Later.
Take care.
Ronch is gone. We are still here. I love when he comes on. I really want to do this more with like him, Lucci, Jay. Like, hop on. Let's talk some shop. The best part is there's no agenda, so we could be fucking out in left field as long as we want. I really don't care.
Yeah, exactly.
It just doesn't matter. But he's got such a pragmatic approach. Right. Yeah. He's got such a good approach to the markets and how he looks at things. And, none of us are like big, not big macro guys. We understand it enough to get by and how we trade it. But, he's got a very like good approach to how he looks at everything. Like, which I can always appreciate because it helps keep me grounded a lot of the times too. And I'm just like, oh, fucking head spinning around. I want to do this, that, and the other.
Well, I think the calls like, he's got some very good points. Like we're sitting at the 200-day, right? But you've got Squeezo and no man's land. And, I love it because he's called me out a handful of times on trades where he's like, dude, what the hell? Why are you buying right here? And it's like, well, I got the call from, so-and-so and said, this is what they want right now. And it's like, I don't have the choice actually. Otherwise I got to have a whole other conversation about not taking a trade. So I agree with you, dude. It's super fun to hear his logic. I mean, obviously you and I get to sit with him, listen to either, you're on stream with him or we're in the room actually talking about trades and what we're doing. And it's a lot of fun, man. I've learned over the years from him so much, and we've got a lot of folks who have as well. So, his big question for you. I've been talking to Marsh a little bit about unrelated stuff. What's he got going on? Anything from our Leaps Quant over there?
I don't know. I haven't like talked to him. I haven't talked to him at all. I haven't been to a session in a while because I've been so busy with a lot of the stuff here with products. So, I haven't dabbled in that yet, but. I want to get him on here too. I keep saying that, and I have to like set it up when I want to get him. You guys will be the ones that'll have to nerd out on that. You guys get so deep psychologically, and my brain is ADHD. I just can't understand it as well. But he's got some really good psychological insights and stuff. So, but before we cut out here, I've been kind of looking at everything in the market and what's kind of going on. And, one thing I haven't paid much attention to, which is your area of expertise that I think a lot of people have taken interest in is what you guys are seeing on gold. So I wanted to touch gold real quick before, we send this off.
I mean, dude, across the metals complex, I still like the long. Obviously it's been, kind of been tough that we got shaken out of that position to watch it then go to highs, but it's resilient here. And that's what I find very interesting. I keep an entire setup over here to watch gold futures. And I don't think the central bank buying has slowed down. I think the one catalyst that we have in the background that's kind of, looming is the Russia-Ukraine peace deal, right? So let's say that deal goes through, we actually make a deal. We've got the minerals deal with the Trump administration. Russia's a big holder of gold, but they also have a lot of supply. So I think that, if you were the guy running the books, you want to restuff the coffers, right? This is going to be the first time that they're actually opened up and the sanctions are removed, that they're going to be able to sell gold to resupply some other resources, whether they're natural resources or commodities. So, I think that there's going to be an interesting dynamic there. But that said, the buying's not really slowing down from what I can say on the inside of, a gold dealer side is, business is booming, absolutely booming. So I know, I'm very close with some folks who run a big company, and yeah, they hand over fist, man. Retail is buying more gold and silver than they have in past years. So we're going to have a record year on that side. And yeah, I think, I don't think it slows down, and it's kind of tough, right? I'm sitting over here looking for the rebuy. Again, it's, from the entry that we had, we would be up significantly now. So
killing
it's, yeah, it's kind of a, the knife in the heart moment where you're like, oh, I'm wanting a pullback. I get a pullback, and I'm like, it's not enough. And then you get a rally in your face, and there's nothing.
Yeah, I mean, it even goes to the point that Ronch was talking about too. I mean, you're a good trader, Smid, right? So, you got head faked. That's okay. It's not
right.
It sucks because you had the thesis, but a lot of it too is, again, the position sizing and the time, which is, again, when you're dealing with a client that wants to buy now and is not willing to like work around the position
size in,
and all that, size in, right? Or hedge against it. So, it's tough. It's tough to really kick yourself too. And the read was right. I mean, when we were talking about it, months ago, and you were giving me like your thesis of where you thought we were going to go. I mean, we haven't hit that number. I think it was what, 3,500 by end of the year. Was that what you're saying?
33. I'd like to see 33. Which again, that's, we've got another nice chunk. We got another almost 10% to get there. About what?
Right.
9.5% to get there. So it's like, hey, it'd still be a great trade from here. And especially with size in the futures market, you're going to get paid. Has there been any big GLD sweepers lately to hit the board? I didn't notice.
That's a good question.
I don't think
so.
I'll pull it up real quick.
Pull it.
No,
I don't think so.
A little bit. It's it looks like a mixed bag over here from today. So we got a couple bowls of bear. There's a little bit. Actually, some decent size. So again, and not that GLD is representative, 1-to-1, but it's something to keep an eye on because it is the exposure a lot of people take. Right.
Yeah, because that's what we were talking about. I mean, I remember when you initially had it around your entry. I mean, I was looking at playing like a gold leap, 12 months out, 18 months out on GLD, right? Just to get my exposure there and kind of play. And again, it would have worked out well. I didn't take it, but now I'm, reconsidering it even here, mostly because as much as I trade in a very short time frames, for most of my trading, it is at an interesting spot. Maybe if we get more of a little bit of a pullback back to like that 2960, if we even get there, or even 3,000, start adding in and seeing what happens. But I like the thesis that you give, and you have the kind of the inside track. So it's tough for me to sit there and kind of even fight it, especially when I'm looking for more downside on the total stock market. Like, I'm still not excited, and I really want to see it come down because I still think a lot of this rally is fueled by, a lot of garbage and short covering and a bunch of other shit. So, I want to see us rinse gold
and
trade to get long in.
Right. And that said, whether or not the logic is sound, when we get these sell-offs, the gold is something that people rotate into, especially the older generation. It's something that they look at and they say, oh, well, got to protect my wealth. I'm going to go buy some gold, So a lot of folks aren't buying it for the appreciation as much as the protection and feeling secure. There's also the Sprott ETF, which I think is a physical gold backed versus, the GLD, as far as I know, is a paper backed. I'm not really sure where they store or vault their gold, or if they do at all. If those are just promissory notes, then, so be it. But on that note, there was a pretty big sweep for January 16th of 2026 yesterday. They bought the 285 calls for $1.5 million. So, there was, looking back, there's been a handful of call sweepers that have actually come in. So, you might see some upside there. I think on March 18th, we had some as well. So a handful of guys buying for this week expiration, the 275s. Those were in the money now. So where's GLD at these days? Let me check real quick. Yeah. So, whoa. I can't type or talk apparently. Good
well, you're sitting on a bench
here from Smiddy. Yeah, exactly.
You're on a stump, my guy.
No, so it looks pretty good, honestly. I'm sure those call buyers are probably, with a little bit of decay looking okay, but I think it's a good buy here. Quite frankly, I don't think that this move slows down. On that note, I always keep little runners or stragglers, as I call them, on the futures. And my copper buy that I bought is up significantly on my single contract. So pulled that up when I was getting on the call, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. We're up, $16,000 on a single contract from weeks ago.
That has been a tough fucking trade. Not copper per se, right? Copper futures.
FCX, right? Because I think you and Brahma played FCX.
Dude, me and Brahma have been playing this shit for it feels like 2 months at this point. But I mean, I got stopped out of my position in that originally on this downturn. I mean, it just, not that it's supposed to have a direct correlation, obviously, to copper. I looked at it almost like it was lagging behind, right? That was the thesis, and I liked Brahma. Now we're shooting it, shot into the gap, and it's probably going to hit my target, which is to the upside now of 44. But we were in it around that price earlier. We were looking for a gap to the other side, of looking for 50, 52, 50, 51. So, and I know he's been playing it. I know he sold calls and he's been back in. He bought a bunch of shares, so he's probably a nice payday. That ticker has now gone on my current do not trade list. Not touching that motherfucker. So
listen, I got caught up trying to trade Bear Gold last year under the same concept and thinking, this is just lagging gold price. Why are people not buying the miners? And Barrick's a good company, right? They make good money, not any kind of, crazy PE ratio. I mean, they're trading a 16 PE, which again, I'm not like a huge PE guy. My client is, so I always got to know these things. But again, good company, solid company with a ton of gold underneath them, and this thing couldn't catch a bid. It was kind of, it was one of those trades that I remember taking a loss on for the year, and then looking back and being like, we could have held this till the end of the year, and it wouldn't have really paid us. So in fact, I think we would have still been underwater with that one. So again, I kind of stay away from the miners because despite them having a really good business model and having, especially in these kind of run-ups in the commodities, they should be able to just print money. I don't know how they run their businesses, but they don't seem to do that. And that's absurd to me. But hey, again, kind of like being the aerospace engineer for Boeing. If I was that clever, I guess I'd be on a yacht somewhere, running a company.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, this is not necessarily like miners for copper, but the one I just watched Deepwater Horizon the other day. It's always, I never watched it before, which is surprising because it's really right up my alley. But that was about that whole Transocean. I think it was Transocean, right? Yeah, Transocean thing. And then I pull up their stock, right? Just like, oh, what are they doing? And holy shit, that thing has gotten fucking clobbered.
What's the ticker on that guy?
RIG. RIG.
Oh, RIG, huh? Fire up the rig. Let's see what we got here.
Yeah, torched.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. And when was that Deepwater debacle? Was that?
I think it was
back in 2018, 19? Or is that more recent? They have
that BP April 2010.
Oh, that was 2010. Oh, yeah. Wow. This thing went, yep. Now I see what you're talking about. This thing's trading $3 off from what? Fucking 100?
Yep.
Yikes.
And I mean,
70,
April,
yeah.
I mean, in April of 2010, I mean, it was trading at $92 a share, and now it's down to $3. So, I haven't done enough research into this one, but I just, it's a name that we used to see a lot of flow in, and I'm just like, I wonder what's going on. But they have a bunch of fucking issues with a lot of their shit.
You know what that reminds me is I was one day, I'll leave you with this. Last year I played Frontier, which is for our Frontline PLC. It's a marine shipping. They do specialize in oil transport. It's kind of an interesting stock. We see flow in it every once in a while. I think I played it around, I don't know, $20 or so. It's trading 16. Kind of an interesting one. Which again, you get the Ukraine-Russia peace deal, and that changes everything. Same, we've got a little bit of debauchery over there in the Red Sea, I believe. So that could shift things as well. I think what the U.S. is getting ready or gearing up to fight the folks in Yemen again, or at least send some bombers over. So that'll be interesting. Some of these companies I feel like really react to those headlines, and kind of interesting to pay attention to.
Yeah, I feel you. we shall see what happens over the next few weeks. Got a lot of economic news. By the time we talk again, it'll be the April 2nd tariff date that everyone's talking about. We got NFP on April 4th. A lot of chaos. I'm going to pull up my calendar to make sure I don't fuck this up. The next day that we will be recording should be April 7th, but I will be on a cruise getting norovirus. So the next date that me and Smiddy will be live will be April 14th. Thank you guys for listening. Like, subscribe, give us 5 stars, please. If you enjoy this content, if you want to see other things, again, email us marketmisfitspod@gmail.com. Open to any and all feedback as we, find some type of cadence and rhythm as we keep on doing these. And once Smiddy is back in the saddle, I'm sure he'll have more insights like he did with India and some other stuff. And eventually, he'll be able to sell or buy something better than a bench, which is what he's working off of right now.
God willing. Hopefully not milk crates, but we'll see.
Don't worry. If you need milk crates, I got a bunch. I'll send them to you.
Beautiful. I love it. Thanks for having me, Joe, and I'll talk to you soon, dude.
Later, everybody. Thank you.